it would be a successful prayer clinic. So if you can go, try to make it to the prayer clinic this year. I saw some of the speakers, got some great speakers on the schedule for this year. Do we have any other announcements? Okay, by way of prayer requests, Frank Crum passed away. So if you would be remembering that family in your prayers. Frank Crum you guys know him. I don't. Most of you know him. He was a longtime church preacher. I'm sorry? Mountain View Church of Christ. I knew he was a preacher. I just didn't know where. I knew he was a preacher. I didn't know where. No. Oh, really? Okay. Few people we need to remember in prayer. Homer and Naomi. Naomi does have COVID. And Delbert and Dottie, they've been sick. And so if you would, keep them in prayers. Also, Jackie Adkins is going to the doctor tomorrow. They did a biopsy last week. And so he goes tomorrow for the results. So if you would remember Jackie in your prayers. And also Brother Rick Moore, he's healing up. He's doing well, sounds well. In fact, he said today was the best day he's had yet since he's had his surgery. And they do believe that they did get all the cancer. So if you would, just continue to keep him in your prayers as he continues to heal. Brother Gary, you told me somebody else, and I didn't write it down. Bill Krieger is the old camp manager. And he has cancer. Okay. Right. Okay, if you would, remember Bill Krieger. Do we have any other prayer requests tonight? Yes, sir. She's been what? Rita Carter, she's having trouble breathing and walking. You're going to have to take that muffler off of you. I can't hear you. I can't understand your accent to begin with, and then you cover it up with that muffler, and I'm having trouble over here. You're just aggravating. I can hear you now. And that way, I got to tune myself so I can understand you. Go ahead. All right. Is she going to go to the doctor? Okay. So she's looking forward to some results. Rita Carter. Anybody else with prayer requests? Yes, ma'am. Ken Deskins? Tim. Tim Deskins has cancer. I don't have the actual prayer list in front of me. I don't know. It may be, but I wrote it down. Oh, that's right. They're expecting a baby. So Trenda, praise the Lord for that. Are you excited? I mean, you look like you're about to bust at the seams. Oh, really? Okay, so take Adam off prayer praise. Take him off. He's clear of COVID, but Trenda's expecting. And also we do have another prayer of praise. Kyson went for surgery Monday, and he's recovering home, and surgery went great. So we'll praise the Lord for that. Any other prayer requests tonight? All right, Brother Gary's going to lead us in prayer. If you would, let's pray.
congregation. And
Go ahead and tell the young people they can come on in if they're out there. I know Angie was taking them upstairs to go pray. They're not in here. They must be upstairs. I was just trying to save you from a mass influx and disturb you. Two announcements that I forgot, and I apologize. We need people to sign up to provide refreshments for Grief Share. We're not asking you to do it every week. We're asking you to sign up to do 1 week. And that's all we need, just 1 week. And there's about 12 people to be safe to provide snacks for. So we need you to sign up and help us in this ministry. Like I said, whenever we first introduced it, this is something that you can get involved in without actually having to have hands-on. And so if you can make it or buy it, we just need some help. So if you would, please do so. Also, we're going to do a trunk or treat here the Thursday before. Am I right? It's on Thursday before Halloween. We're going to do trunk or treat in the parking lot. And so we'd like for you to get involved in that. And we're going to be talking with you some more. And we're going to advertise for it. We're going to put some banners up. We're going to advertise for it. And we're going to try to reach out into the community for Jesus Christ. Now, enough of the announcements. Jeff Green's here with us tonight from IDES. We played a video about six months ago, Steve. Was it about 6 or 8 months ago? And he was on the video. And then he was at camp this year, and Steve introduced me. And for 2 days, it took me 2 days to figure out that he was the guy on the video. Because I went up to him 2 days later and said, man, I feel like I know you. And I said, oh, I know what it was. It was on the video. Steve said, yeah, he was the guy on the video for IDES. And I knew I'd never met him before. But we got to visit with him this past July at camp, and we're happy to have him to come and tell us about IDE, so I'll leave it to Jeff at this time.
Didn't have to eat any of it because I hooked up with you all, and I got some great food all week long, and I think I gained 10 more pounds. So it was wonderful. And I want to share with you tonight that I have roots here in Pikeville. In fact, my great grandfather was the Pikeville jailer during this little feud thing that was going on between the Hatfields and McCoys. And he was a jailer. He had his hands full, needless to say. In fact, one of the cases that he brought went all the way to the Supreme Court. And it was a battle between Kentucky governor and the West Virginia governor. And the Kentucky governor won, like we should always win, right? You know, I have to be careful that my wife's from West Virginia. But anyways, his last name was Justice. William Justice was his name. He had a son, William Jr., and he ended up going to Ashland, Kentucky. After he grew up here, and then they migrated to Ashland, and that's where all my family's from, Ashland, Kentucky, on both sides. In fact, my last name is Green, and my grandfather Green dated my grandmother Justice. She was a Campbell then. We have Campbells in this area too. Her family came from here too. But anyways, my grandparents dated each other in high school. Now, if you can understand that. My grandfather Green and my grandmother Justice dated each other in high school. Didn't work out. They married other people, and then their kids married each other and had me. So the interesting thing is that they were such close friends all through their lives. They both migrated to Melbourne, Florida. That's where I grew up. And they're buried side by side. The Greens and the Justice are buried side by side in Port Malabar, Florida.
So when they had you, it still didn't work out.
Yeah, I know. You know, it was a thing. So I have roots in Pikeville. In fact, I've gone just down the road here. My great grandfather has a nice monument at the I don't remember which graveyard it is, but I've been there taking pictures, and really wonderful roots here in Pikeville. Well, let me tell you a little bit about IDES. I started working at IDES back in February of 2020. I had been working at Kentucky Christian University, formerly Kentucky Christian College, for about 9 years as a director of church relations and alumni. And then back in 2019, IDES approached me. We have had a good relationship over the years, and they were looking for church relations. Long story short, I became their new director of church relations in February of 2020. In March of 2020, everything went into turmoil, didn't it? And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's a church relations guy can't go to churches because they're not meeting. They're meeting online, and so it wasn't until June, and now I've been quite busy since things have gotten back to some normalcy. Still have to be careful, but we are just so grateful to be able to share, and I'm thankful to share with you tonight. So IDE stands for International Disaster Emergency Service, and it was started back by a couple, Milton and Janet Bates. And Milton was a pattern maker in Indiana, and he was an elder at the church, at the Marian Church of Christ. And one night they were watching television. Now, back in those days, there were 3 channels, if you were lucky, right? ABC, CBS, NBC. So it just so happened they were on one of those channels. My wife only got one channel. She was up next to a hill in West Virginia, so she only got one. But they were watching television, and one of the things that they were watching that night was a catastrophic storm had hit Bangladesh, and it killed over 500,000 people. And one of the reporters was there, and the reporter was looking around and looking at the camera, and he asked the question, won't somebody help these people? And so Milton began asking the question, where is the Christian churches and the churches of Christ, the restoration churches? Where are we? Do we not have a relief agency? All the other churches seemed like they had something, but we didn't have really anything to speak of back in the 1970s. And he said, someone needs to do something about that. He said, we could have a stronger witness in the world if we would cooperate together. And so he began praying about it, and he began meeting with other ministers, and in 1973, IDES was formed. Now, this is back before computers, so they had to make their kitchen their office, and there they typed letters, there they made phone calls, and there they began putting things together. And then Richard Sprague came on board, and for the next 10 years, things began to grow slowly. And to get to a missionary, sometimes it took some time to work out all the things. Today, we can do most things instantaneously. When we hear about an earthquake in Haiti, within 24 hours, we have funds already made available so they can get the needed aid into the area. And so in the mid-1980s, they purchased a building, purchased some land, and they were able to continue to grow. And its purpose is very simple, helping suffering people and sharing hope and the love of Jesus. That's what we do, and that's our missions. IDES Missions is very one of those things that I just love, their mission. It says, we accomplish our mission through the support of churches and individuals on behalf of international ministry and mission partners, both here in the United States and abroad. Acts 11:27-30 says, during this time, some prophets traveled from Jerusalem to Antioch. And one of them, named Agabus, stood up in one of the meetings and predicted by the Spirit that a great famine was coming upon the entire Roman world. This was fulfilled during the reign of Claudius. So the believers in Antioch decided to send relief to the brothers and sisters in Judea, everyone giving as much as they could. This they did, entrusting their gifts to Barnabas and Saul to take to the elders of the church in Jerusalem. And that's how IDES operates. Today, what we do is churches and individuals entrust their gifts to IDES. 100% of all individual gifts goes to suffering people. I was at one church and I said, if you were to give a check tonight for $100, if you were to give a check tonight for $100, if you were to give a check for $100, that would go 100% to help suffering people. Somebody gave me a check for $100 afterwards. I took it to our executive director and he said, that's fantastic. Next time ask for $500. So anyways. So we want to make sure that as much money as possible gets out from us. So many organizations will take a percentage off, and IDES decided right away that wouldn't be for individuals. Only a portion of our gifts from churches goes to help with operational expenses, salaries, as well as upkeep on our building and our fleet of vehicles that we have to have. And we are just so grateful for this church, for your continued support over the years in so many different ways, not only financially, but also volunteering your time. You've done some great things, and I've been fortunate to be able to experience it, not just at IDES, but also when I worked at Kentucky Christian. When the 2012 tornadoes hit, you guys were really involved, big time, and especially with our sheds, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Right now, IDES currently has 14 full-time staff, so we are highly dependent on our volunteers. So to make it look, just a little picture here that I created, churches and individuals give to IDES, and then IDES takes that money and uses it where it can use the most good. And the more churches and individuals we have, the more people we can help. So IDE's mission has a 5 focus, and these are what we focus on. Disaster response, which is in our name, and then community development, medical care, hunger relief, but it's all centered around evangelism. When a mission partner wants to apply for a grant, one of the questions on the grant is how will this money be used to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ? And they have to give us an answer, and they have to follow through with that. And let me show you how that works with evangelism. This year we had the evangelism. We had Thailand, the Karen Hill tribe in Thailand. And if you know anything about this tribe, it's in Thailand and also in Myanmar. And so they had horrible monsoons back in, I think, I'm going to say December, January, February, their monsoon season, and it just wiped out so much of their crops. And so we were able to come alongside our mission partners, and so part of the rice was consumed, but then unmilled rice was also planted so they could recover. And here's some of the pictures of the mission partners giving that rice and distributing it to the people throughout the land there. And then the evangelists would follow up, and they would follow up with the people who received rice and begin teaching them the gospel. And out of this one event, 11 baptisms resulted from the follow-up. And that really is, what we love to see. We love to see how God is working, even through disasters, that the gospel can continue to be preached so that they have help and they have hope, right? We also have partnered for several years with Christian Missionary Fellowship and the work that they are doing in Kenya. The Turkana tribe was an unreached people group back in the 80s. And then when missionaries started focusing on them back in the 90s, one of the things they discovered was they were so desperate for food. They were a nomad tribe, so they would travel from water source to water source. Some of the water sources were drying up, and so they were dependent on outside food about 10 months out of the year. So many of their babies would die because they couldn't reach the age of 1. So about 50% of the children were dying. IDE's discovered deep well waters could be drilled down, used with solar energy, and the water would spring up, and then they would have fresh water, and then out of that they started the farm community. And here you see one of the pictures of the farm that's there. It's not like a typical farm that we see around here where there's just one crop. Several crops, a lot like maybe your garden that you would have at your home. And each of these farms that they feed about 100 people, 10 families up to 100 people, and they are doing incredible work there. One of the things that they started doing along with this is a disciple discovery studies. Now, it's all verbal. No one reads or writes yet. And so they would verbally teach and tell the stories of Jesus, and then they would tell their families, and the things there are just flourishing. IDES and CMF Turkana Farms Partnership, 30 farms since 2014. We are set to do 10 more this year. Over $500,000 has been invested so far. And the results from these investments, each farm feeds 10 families, or about 100 people, 900 families with access to irrigated farming, about 9,000 people then, and then 2,500 discipleship groups, 9,000 plus members, 100 plus churches. And since 2017, over 7,000 people have been baptized into Christ. I tell you, it just is one of those things where God is working, and it's such a joy for us to be able to partner with what God is doing, and they're doing incredible things. And so that's how evangelism works, and we are doing these 10 new farms this year, feed 1,000 people, $150,000 for those farms. You can see that now they're using, if I have a little thing there, but they are using tents over some of their farms because last year they had a locust invasion. So we had to come back behind the locust invasion to give them more seeds and irrigation supplies so they could start up again. And so that's to protect from those kinds of critters. Medical care, we've been working for a long time with Dr. Ajay Lal. Dr. Lal is well known in the Christian church. He is in Central India Christian Mission. This past year, they gave us a plaque because we were one of their largest supporters because they have so many disasters and so many needs. This past year, we did 50 cleft palates that changes children's lives. We usually do more than that, but because of COVID, they had to cut back. Then we also helped with other things like the personal protective equipment that is so needed around the world. Here's an example. We helped in Honduras. And then we partnering with another mission in India to help them with 100+ clinics, medical clinics, where they can share some basically over-the-counter medicines. They can help address some of their healthcare needs, but also to distribute eyeglasses. And we're excited about that. And then we partnered back in February of 2020 when the pandemic started in China. They were desperate at that time for personal protective equipment. And so we partnered with Christ Reaching Asia Missions along with FAME, the medical evangelist, to get those protective equipment into China. And the thing that was really neat about that partnership is then when we started having some issues with the personal protective equipment here, we partnered back with them again, and this time China was more stable, and they were able to give us the personal protective equipment, so we were able to address it here, especially with our first responders who were desperate for it at that time. And there you see one of the CRAM representatives giving some masks to a first responder. We also do like pharmacies in Haiti. Went a little bit too fast there. Pharmacies in Haiti, helping them with their medical needs there. So it's just one of those examples of what we do all around the world. And then we do community development. Community development, I's mission is to help people get a better future for themselves. And it's not a handout, it's a helping hand up. And so this past year we did 25 community development projects in 15 nations. Over $340,000 was spent. And some of the things that we do is we do wells. We do a lot of wells to help with that. And this is one that you see there in Ghana Christian Mission. And then in India, we do things like provide motorcycles. This year, we're with Roy Knight at Asia Shine, the Church of Christ Mission. In India, we are doing 25 motorcycles. I love the motorcycles. I don't know if you can read that, but it says Hero Honda. And that to me is cool, because the evangelists are heroes. And we have a lot of videos of them riding those motorcycles around, and you could tell they're so excited about it. And it gets them into places where they can't go. When I was in Brazil, we were missionaries in Brazil, and I remember we were working with some of our ministers in Sao Paulo, and he had to take 4 different buses to get to his church. And so we were able to provide some funding for him to get a car. I think $2,500, and he got a car, and he was able to plant more churches because of that, and that's the reason why we help with that. And then we are helping other places like in Ethiopia. Craig and Allison Fowler have planted churches using water wells to do that. Once they plant that water well, it is a community kind of event. And so they were able to take that and be able to share the gospel. And she's a nurse, and so one of the things that they were commissioned to do was to build a water well near at the prison, near the prison. They had never done prison ministry, and this is in Ethiopia. And if you're following along, some of the things that are happening in Ethiopia are dire. But in the south, it's so far so good. So they started this water well, and now they've launched a prison ministry. And things are happening quickly there. And this month, a couple of our representatives, a couple of our guys on staff are going there to visit this particular prison to see all the things that are happening there. Again, the gospel is being preached through these things. We helped in the Philippines. The Philippines went through it. A lot of countries that went through COVID, when the country shut down, they had no way to get their livelihood to market. And so a lot of farms had to be destroyed because of it. And here in the Philippines was no different. And so we helped with getting them back on their feet with seeds as well as with oxen and how important that is. And then we helped in places where there's a lot of human trafficking going on. In Thailand, for example, Mysot, Thailand. So we provide sewing machines, something that you wouldn't think maybe much. What's a sewing machine? Well, it teaches a trade, teaches them how to sew, and then they take their goods to market. So we provide the bicycle so they can get it to market, and they're doing incredible work there in Thailand with getting people out of the human trafficking that's so prevalent in that area. And then this past year, we helped with Hippo Valley. Hippo Valley is one of those, Jerry, I don't know, that came out of Kentucky Christian College years ago, back in the 50s. The Pruitts and the Pembertons came to the college because when they were in World War II, they kind of said, God, if you get me out of this, I'll give the rest of my life to you. And both of them, God got them out. He had other plans for them. 60 years ago, they started this mission work in it was Rhodesia then, Zimbabwe now, and just doing incredible things. And so this past year, we're partnering with them even more. We just sent a shipment of food, our food packs, to Hippo Valley. It's on its way. And then last year, we supplied goats for all their ministers. They have a week of training, and there was over 100 of them, so they all got a goat. And some of them were on buses. I don't know how they got them home, but, you know. I won't go there, but I was going to say, there's always possibilities, most of the time, or nay. But anyways, I told you I shouldn't have gone there. Bad joke. If you want to learn more about all the things that we do, we have a catalog, a gift catalog that you can afford from like $10 for items all the way up to a few $1,000s to help those, give them a helping hand. And then, yeah. Absolutely. This buy a goat. Absolutely. You can buy a chicken, goat. You can buy fish for the fish pond. All those things are there. Netting. We'll be getting out a new one this end of this month, but this one is about the same as it will be for next year, but it'll get you down the road for sure. Hunger relief is another big effort that we do. We fund both long and short-term hunger reliefs. In 2020, we did 35 hunger relief projects in 10 nations. Over $1 million. This is a little skewed because we also invested over $1 million for COVID relief. And a lot of that COVID relief was for food. And so this is what we gave for food for a lot of our normal places. We did over 1 million meal packs of 37 GAP events. And now we're up over 8 million, approaching 9 million. And over $660,000 for hunger relief. 3 opportunities that we do. We have our GAP program, our Harvest of Talents, and our Sunfish Banks. And the GAP program is really kind of cool. I think they're doing it real soon over at Cornerstone. Yeah, okay, and you've done it twice here. So you guys know all about it. It's fantastic because the young and the older can come together and have just a great time of fellowship and really are doing an incredible work, because these are so needed, especially when we have emergency situations like we did in August with the Haiti earthquake. We were able to get these food packs into it where you can't get perishable items in there, but these are non-perishable for the most part, and they can get in there. So you guys know all about that. We were in Afghanistan up until, of course, things closed there. We were flying into Afghanistan for free on the U.S. Air Force. They were flying it in. We had mission partners there that got it to not just, they were also funneling it through the government programs. It was a great witness, and of course, everything has changed so much. Pray for Afghanistan. We're still getting some funds into the area, and we'll keep doing that as long as we can. Our mission partner that was there did get out, but he still has a lot of workers and a lot of Christians. For those 20 years that we were there, the church grew. Now we need to pray for all of it. And then, of course, our GAP program in Haiti is very central. Here you see some of the meals that are just taken, put together, and is able to get into emergency situations. A couple of years ago, back in 2020, I guess it was just a year ago, had a hurricane or a tropical storm come through, flooding, and so they were able to share that with their neighbors, and that's what we like to see. So it's a constant need, and we're so grateful for our churches that come alongside us so that we can do that. We have a harvest of talent opportunity. I know this church probably has, all of you have some kind of a talent, whether it's a talent to, paint or you can woodwork. I'll share with you just a minute, but it started back in 1984 at Lincoln Christian Church in Lincoln, Illinois, and it's raised, last year we raised $189,000, which was a record year for us in the middle of COVID. So you take your talents, and some of the talents are quilts and paintings and needlepoint, crochet. So you would bring all your items and you would set it up for maybe a Saturday, and people would be able to come and buy your things. Or maybe most of the churches will have either a silent auction or an auction, and all the proceeds, 100% goes to help the hungry. We use this for our long-term programs, and it's used every year. And it's just exciting. What's funny is to go to these things and to see they have bidding wars. I think the rumor is that they had a $20 bill that somebody said, here, auction this off, and it went for $2,000. I don't know if they understood what they were doing, or they got, hey, I got $2,000 to give to the hungry, so I'm just going to bid on a $20 bill. But most of the things are really just nice items, and they go and they do really good. And here you see some of them and how they line it up and how they do that. We'll be having a couple of them this month, and the one in Lincoln, they've been doing it since 1980s, will be the highlight of all of them. They usually raise about $100,000 at that one. And then our Sunfish Banks, we've raised over $1 million using the Sunfish Bank coins. What I love about this program is you fill it up, you count the money, and then you send a check. 100% goes to help the hungry. Then what do you do with all that change? You fill it up. Okay, anyways, it's reusable. You just fill it right back up. Write another check. No. Okay, all right. Just real quick, COVID last year really was devastating around the world. When we reached out to 34 countries, 8 states, and it was incredible what we were seeing. And one of the hardest hit areas was India, and one of the things India was doing was destroying their crops, and because they needed to replant. If they didn't get them out to harvest, they had to destroy them, and that's what we saw a lot of. And I think they have since fixed some of that. But still, this year, we had a lot of COVID events. In fact, by I think June, we had more COVID deaths worldwide in that first 6 months of 2021 than all of 2020. It came back with a vengeance, And if you look at history and you look at the big pandemic of the 1919, I think it was, they had the same issue. The second wave was a more devastating one. And we helped a lot of churches and outreach, as well as with schools. Here we're helping with a school in our area get the food out. And then, of course, our disaster response, real quick here. We did 179 disaster response last year in 30 nations. And that's the one thing, whether you have COVID or not, you're going to still have disasters. We had tornadoes right before COVID pandemic hit us back in February of last year in Tennessee. We had flooding in Michigan. We had the Michigan Evangelistic Association. I was at a church where he spoke for a few minutes, and he said that imagine you cut your grass, you live on a lakefront property, you cut your grass, and you sit down and you're watching a storm from the distance coming in, and it's getting closer, so you go to bed that night, listen to the thunder and lightning, and then you get up that next day and you look out and there's no lake. That's what happened in Michigan. Two dams breached, and the reservoir that he lived on was completely gone. And so all that water went down into the towns, and so they had a couple of towns that were just devastated. And so we always work through a Christian Church of Christ, because we are the Christian Church of Christ relief organization. Other churches have theirs. We work for the restoration churches. And in that area, there wasn't any that were in that area. And so we had a minister about an hour away said he took up the charge, and he was able to bring his people in. And out of that, they were able to do a lot of work, help with at least 4 homes, get them back on their feet. And they started a small group of people who wanted a church there. And so the Evangelism Association of Michigan got behind it. And so they're planning at least 1, maybe 2 churches in this town, Beaverton, Michigan. And it's just remarkable to see. Again, that's where that evangelism is front and center. We helped in Iowa after a derecho, and then we, of course, helped in Louisiana. This is last year. In Lake Charles, Louisiana, they had not 1 but 2 hurricanes. And you can see the picture of the church there with the tarp partially ripped off. That's because they had the tarp after the first hurricane. The second hurricane came 40 days later, and it ripped it off and dumped water. They were devastated. And so we were able to get down there for about 4 or 5 months with different volunteers and organization that we work with and help the people there. And you guys are all a part of that. Your gifts are all a part of everything that I'm talking about tonight. And of course, 2020, you couldn't talk about it without, hey, a volcano. We had a volcano in the Philippines at the beginning of 2020. And then, of course, the wildfires out west, we had a lot of churches that were helping people that were displaced, and so we were able to send aid there. And then, of course, the COVID situation. This year, we've been working specifically with some of the things that you've heard about. One of them, of course, is in Haiti. Haiti has taken so much. It's a very desperate situation, not only because of the earthquake, but also the political situation there. They had gone through the assassination of their president. Everything's pretty much in chaos. But yet our mission partners, they know how to do things and how to do it right. Here you see a makeshift home. These are what they put up because they have no other place after the earthquake. And so we began responding. We worked with Damu Christian Mission, and they began getting an engineer as well as some workers, and so they started building homes. And we also, you can see this is Lubens, Eugene. I don't know if you know Damu Christian Mission, do great work. And so you brought the team together, and they put up the first house. This is it. It's not as easy to see as I'd like. And so we're working with, right now, with 2 specific groups, Damu and Jeremy Christian Mission, and our goal is to do 30 homes in the first phase, which will cost $10,000 a home or $300,000. Here you see the roof going on that one little house that I showed you. And so we also are working in Louisiana. We've been there the last 4 weeks. We've got at least 2 more weeks that we're going to be working. We've also had another church reach out to us, so we may even go further. But we've been working there out of the Mandeville Christian Church and helping the area. One of the things that we depend on so much is our volunteers. We can't do it without them. We only have two response coordinators. We only have 2 guys. So when they get there, they set up, and then the volunteers start coming in, and they're there one week after another. We've got some great people that come. Then we've been working in Myanmar this year. It's been one of the hard-hit and sad stories. The government, the army took over in February, and things have spiraled out of control, especially when they go in and they just burn villages down because they don't like the people group that's there. And so there's this huge crisis that's happening in Thailand with displaced people running there. Some of our mission partners have also had to leave, and they've set up camps to help with the refugees. So far, we've already spent $500,000, and it's just a drop in the bucket. We do the best we can. It's a desperate situation. Pray for Myanmar. And here you see them coming down on their little makeshift rafts to get away from the violence. And here's what Lazarus Fish, he's one of those guys that just loves the Lord, and I'm excited. I want to meet him because of what he does, but every opportunity he preaches the gospel, and here you see him talking to the people as he's sitting on rice. Hey, captive audience, and he's able to share that gospel with them. We also helped with Asia Christian missions. We put a security wall. They were in an area that was having violence in Myanmar, and they have a children's home there, and so we were able to help them get some security there. So volunteers work with our disaster relief with our response team afterwards, and they do all kinds of different things. It's so important to get people back on their feet. One of our things is the shed build, and I know Steve and Jerry, you guys know a lot about that. You guys did, how many sheds did you do in the? 51. And I remember going and being a part of that, and we were helping with a home. Their house was completely destroyed. There was a family of 4, and they ended up in a corner of their house, and it saved them. But their little dog wasn't with them, and so if you remember that storm, 2 days later it snowed. Do you remember that? It was some wacky weather. It snowed, and so they felt their dog was gone. And then one day, like it happened on the weekend, and then like Wednesday, they saw some movement under some debris, and they went over, and there was that little Jack Russell. And they pulled that Jack Russell off, and they ended up having lost one of its eyes, and it was running around while we were building a shed, just as happy as could be. And he was glad to see me, I know. But anyways.
Where was that?
I was in West Liberty. Yeah, it was in the West Liberty.
I remember that story.
Yeah. I got a picture of that dog. I just thought it was the sweetest dog. And so the shed build is so important because people need storage after storms, flooding. And it's so important that we do that. Back in 2016, we had the Clendena. You probably all remember that. That was a lot of news here. And there you see a picture of that flooding. It came up overnight. They were able to get stuff across the street, their vehicles across the street. Then they took a canoe back and forth to get as much out of their house. And it's pitch dark, no electricity, and they were pulling out as much as they could. And that's the house beside it a few days later. And the person who lived there is named Rose, and I just so happened, I working with my son-in-law who was working for IDES at that time, and I went with him and talked to Rose, and she said, I don't know what we would do without the church, and that was so important, and that's the shed that we built on her property. So volunteers, we have volunteers of all ages that come into our warehouse, and we also do the food packs. We just can't do it without volunteers and the funding that our churches bring. This past year, we had a changeover in our executive director. Went from Rick Jett, who'd been there 19 years, and over to David Stein, who's started this past January, and Rick now is fully retired last month. He did a great job, Rick has, to grow the ministry. 1 John 3:18 says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." And that's what you all are doing around the world. You're making an impact, and it's so exciting. We have training that we offer, Prepare to Respond. I know you all are so gifted at so many different things, and you've helped us with so many areas, whether it's after a hurricane or the tornadoes, and it's just teaching churches how to be better prepared when a disaster happens. And then we also do safe worship, and I know you guys have a handle on that as well, but if you need refreshers or whatever, we do that for free. We also have this thing called Indiana Josh. It's a children's program, VBS program. It teaches the children about AIDS. We filmed that during the pandemic at different parks in Indiana, and we make it look like we're going around the world. I left it at home. Yeah, that was me. It was a blast. And so we appreciate your prayers, volunteered, and your donations. I love this line when he said we would have a stronger witness in the world if we would be able to cooperate together. This is what we did in 2020, and it was over 40 countries and several states, and this is what we've done since the beginning. I think it's around 127. It's, I think, more than that now, and we're just so grateful for the opportunity to share Christ. That's our information there, and we really appreciate every opportunity we have to be able to share what you guys are doing, and that's what I love about IDES. It's together. We're making a difference, and one of the things that happens is we are able to help missionaries stay on the field because after a disaster, they don't have to leave. We help them so they can stay, and that helps overall. So we've had testimonies to that extent too, and some of the missions that you support, we've supported as well, and helped them through whatever crisis they may be in or whatever need they may have. So thank you for that. So I think we're going to have Randy. Is it Randy?
Before he prays,
Okay, yep.
We do have the GAP event at Cornerstone the last Saturday of this month. So be prepared to go and help with that. So we're excited to get involved with that. Last year was my first one. And what he's telling you about Louisiana is absolutely true. Because I had some of my own family that was in Lake Charles helping IDES.
Yep.
And the church in churches in those areas were helping IDES.
Right.
And I know those people personally. So big round of applause.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming and share with us. Randy's going to close us in prayer.
Shall we pray? Thank you, God, for another day of life you've given us, Lord. Thank you for an opportunity to allow us to come out into your house, Lord, and hear about IDES and the good works that they're doing all over the world, Lord. Lord, I pray that you'll bless them and continue to allow them to grow and save souls. Be with them and guide them in everything that they do. Be with us as we go out into the world, Lord. Help us to be a light in the world. Go with us and guide us again, I pray. Forgive us when we sin. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.